This is my new phone. I've been debating getting a new phone. So I'm kind of a cash-conscious guy, but the good news is my read of technology, because I'm a technology guy, right? My read of technology is so sound. I know exactly what the trends are going to be like for the next 15 to 20 years. So I can make my decision about what type of phone to get based upon this knowledge. So I've debated the ones on the left. Those mobile phones are really quite cool. Or the one on the right that slides effortlessly into somebody's tank or something similar. So in choosing this new phone, my ability to predict 15 years down the line of what technology will do and what I need to do with my phone is critical for me. And that's why I'm choosing one of these. Finally, I told you earlier on I got a new house. Critical piece of the new house, my wife wants a new sofa. It's a nice big sofa. We got a couple of kids, got to fit in the room, got a dog. All of this stuff needs to fit in. The problem is I bought a new sofa. Here's a picture of the guys trying to put it in. And I've got to get it through the damn door. I didn't think of that. My ability to choose this sofa is constrained by the size of the door in my house. That's a real nuisance for me. I just cannot get the sofa I want through the door in my house. So I didn't buy that sofa in the end. I had to send it back. I bought a deck chair and unfolded it, and we sit on a deck chair in the middle of the lounge. So those are the 4 decisions that I've made recently in my life. You're probably wondering why the heck I'm stood up on here talking allegedly as a knowledgeable person in the space industry when I make such spectacularly stupid decisions. Because you're thinking to yourself, why do this? These problems are solved in today's world. The new car that when it runs out of gas, I dump. The furnace that I'm critically dependent on, that I close the door on and I leave for 15 years. The cell phone I bought, where I have to predict 15 years worth of technology into the future. And finally, the sofa that I can't get through my door. Solutions exist for all of these. You know them. I don't think I'm going to tell you anything you don't know. We have gas stations. Drive your car up to a gas station, fill it up with gas. We have service guys who will drive out if your car breaks down, and they'll fix it for you. So my fantastic, beautiful red car, I only have to replace when I get a new shirt. The rest of the time, it's good. Here's a furnace. We have furnace repair guys, maintenance programs. They come in, they check. They're going to see whether the furnace is working or not. They do preventative maintenance. They try and make sure that it works before it breaks down on that minus 20 degrees centigrade morning in Canada or wherever it is. And they make sure it's going to work. They also come fix it when it's broken. My cell phone. So today's cell phones, you guys all know this, I've got 100 apps. So even if you don't get it right on day one, just download a new app. It lands on your phone. 10 minutes later, you're doing Facebooking or whatever it is you wanted to do in a flash. Solutions exist. The picture at the bottom is a little small, but it's USBs. USBs have become ubiquitous. Everybody has a device that plugs into a computer and becomes a fully usable extension of your computer. Software and hardware, we can now buy a device and have it extendable and reusable in different ways. These are good problems. IKEA. Here's a guy in the bottom left-hand corner showing up for his job interview at IKEA. It says, guy says, please take a seat. Have a seat. Got to build it himself. The flat pack, the whole industry here. I didn't have to buy that large piece of sofa. I could have gone to IKEA, bought a smaller one, and assembled it in the room. It's kind of obvious, right? These solutions exist. But what about our industry? What about space? Do these solutions exist in our industry? And my assertion is, nope, not even close. Not even close. And remember how stupid you all thought I was when I talked through my first 4 slides. So what happens in our industry? When a satellite runs out of fuel, it's done. Doesn't matter if it works or not. It's done. It's finished. You just tow it off into graveyard orbit and leave it there. It's finished. Intelsat estimated about 70% of their satellites reach end of life purely because of fuel. Satellites working perfectly fine, just out of fuel. So imagine if we did that with our cars. Insane. What about satellites that stop working? So sensationalist headline, ZombieSat. ZombieSat, what's next for the out-of-control satellite? If a satellite stops working, that's it, we're done. Finished. Can't do anything about it. It hurtles through space, totally out of control, and crashes into whatever, or crashes into the ground. Who knows? Again, imagine if I did that with my car or my furnace. You guys would think I was stupid. We have satellites that last a long period of time. RADARSAT 1, built by my company, lasted 17 years, supposed to last 5. By the time it reached the end of its 17 years, it wasn't doing anything like the current technology base. We had to update it multiple times. RADARSAT 1 lasted so long, they even wrote a book about it. You can probably buy that book on Amazon or something, but it's a long book. We have restrictions on rockets. Now, Clay talked about Ariane Space, all the fantastic things they do, SpaceX do. But you've still got to fit your satellite into that rocket. If it doesn't fit, tough. It's like trying to get my sofa into the house. If it doesn't fit, tough. Why do we live in the space industry with these ridiculous constraints? Well, I have an answer to that. What's missing? So what's missing is this guy. This guy is missing from the space industry. You know, like all of us who go to work on a regular basis, he has multiple arms, multiple tools. This guy is missing from the space industry. This guy services your car. This guy fills up your gas tank. This guy maintains your furnace. This guy helps you with your cell phone selection and makes sure that your cell phone can be updated on a regular basis. And this guy assembles your IKEA furniture for you, if that's what you want. So, that's missing. Or is it? It's kind of close. So, what is that thing? So, this is the Canada hand. The Canada hand is the robot that sits on the end of the robotic arm that is on the International Space Station today. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. It's got multiple fingers. It's huge. It's about the same size as I am. It's got multiple different tools. It's got long arms. The long arms can move in multiple different directions. We can take additional tools up to it. It has vision on the end of each arm, better than me. My eyes are here, my fingers are here. This thing has got vision at the end of every single arm, and it can do all those things. The robot arms in Canada are fantastic things. I'm a Canadian, as you could probably figure out. The Canada arm that's on the space station, you guys will have seen the Gravity film, where the Canada arm gets smashed in the early scenes. So it's a famous piece of equipment. They had a vote in Canada on what was the most significant Canadian achievement, the single largest achievement in Canada. There was 4 candidates. International peacekeeping, free healthcare for all, maple syrup, ice hockey, and they were all beaten by a Canada arm. Canadians voted it the single best thing Canada's ever done. Makes me kind of proud because it's my company and I've worked on it myself. When I was, I just wanted to follow up on one of Clay's stories. Working in space is such a cool thing. The technology from this thing is up there in space on a daily basis doing all kinds of different things. The technology's also come down to Earth. The technology developed in this robot does brain surgery here on Earth. People go into brain surgical operations in British Columbia and come out the next day having had robots entirely and only operate on their brain. That's really cool technology that space has brought down to Earth. But the best thing about that, it gives me the best party line in the world. Because when people ask me what I do, I say, well, it's not rocket science, it's not brain surgery, it's both. And that's a really good line for a party. So this thing is available today. Robotics is available today. And robotics is a way in which we can change those crazy rules of the space industry. And that's really what I wanted to say to you guys today. You guys are the next generation of space leaders. Clay talked about that. David's talked about that. A space future where we use robots to do in space what we routinely do here on the ground will open up a whole new space architecture, an entirely different paradigm. It will make space more relevant. It will make exploration more relevant. It will add new economic models. It will benefit everybody here on Earth. We could completely change the way the world works. I'll talk about that in a slide or two. One other story about robots. When my daughter was 4 years old, I took her to a launch. I was invited to a launch from NASA, the launch of this thing. And we went along. My daughter was 4. So for her, this experience was just fantastic. Anyway, 3 months later, I'm at school picking her up. And the teacher came out to see me. And normally my wife picked up my daughter, but this time I was there. And as soon as the teacher saw me, she made a beeline for me. She walked right over to me. And she said, "Are you Hannah's dad?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, God, I've always wanted to meet you." I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yes." She says, "We're so proud of you." And I'm like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, why?" And she said, "Well, Hannah came into school and we did the show and tell. She tells me you're an astronaut." And I said, "Well, I'm almost an astronaut." So working in space is cool for many, many reasons. So what do we do if we can do this type of robotics? What type of things open up in opportunity? Again, back to the Canadarm on the space station again. Interesting story about the Canadarm. You've all seen it's got Canada written down the sides. When NASA wanted a Canadarm, nobody really wanted to build this thing or do this thing. The space station guys weren't that sure whether they wanted it. They had astronauts. What do we need a robotic arm for? But the Canadians were dumb enough, clever enough, whichever one you choose, to put up the money to build the Canadarm. And when they did that, they asked NASA for a requirement spec. They said, "Well, tell us what you want us to build." So all the smart guys in NASA all got together, the space station guys, and they wrote a 5-page requirement spec. That was the best they could come up with. What the hell are we going to do with a robot in space? So they wrote a 5-page requirement spec. Luckily, the Canadian Space Agency was smart enough to spec a robot that could do many, many things. Today, the robotic arm is used every single day on the space station for construction, for maintenance, for inspection, all of these kind of things. It grabs things, pulls them in for rendezvous. It repairs the outside of the station. The one on the shuttle inspected the underside of the shuttle after every launch to make sure no tiles have fallen off. The requirement spec today would be this thick. My point, when you have a capability, you start to use it. If you don't have a capability, you don't know what to do. So let's build robots in space that allow us to change the industry. It's happening today. We're working with DARPA and NASA on programs that will do things in the middle. First of all, self-assembly. So imagine if you can take up to space a satellite and then plug more elements on top of it. This is analogous again to my sofa problem. I can't get the sofa into my house because the door is too small. I can't get the satellite I want because the rocket fairing is too small. If I go buy a much larger rocket, it costs me a ton of money because big rockets are expensive. Maybe I buy small rockets and I build satellites that can be glued together and connected together using robots. That technology exists today, can be done in a flash. Straightforward and easy to do, robotic assembly. Modularity. If I'm going to do that, I need satellite elements that can plug together. I need a first unit that plugs on the second unit, the third unit, and the fourth unit. Now I can start pulling off one element and replacing it with another, if that's what I need to do. If you do that with communication satellites, you do it with exploration, and suddenly you've got an architecture in space that you can build on. Exactly the same as in every IKEA pack, there's 100 common parts, and then about 15 different parts that are unique to the particular application. We're all used to that for IKEA. Maintenance. Imagine if when our satellite ran out of fuel, like my car runs out of fuel, we didn't have to just dump it. Imagine if we could refuel it. Imagine if we could fix a satellite whose antenna doesn't come up. A lost antenna can cost hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue to a satellite operator if it doesn't unfold. And that's it, we're done. Doesn't unfold, finished. All you need to do is go up, maybe give it a little tug, maybe snip a thermal blanket that it's caught on. Suddenly it's all usable again. You get your hundreds of millions of dollars back. Imagine if you could do all those things. So where does that take you? What's the art of the possible? I think the art of the possible is lots of things. Configurable satellites. Satellites that, unlike my cell phone dilemma, doesn't require me to predict the next 15 years in advance. Currently, we build a satellite, and they cost so much money to build and launch, they have to last 15 to 20 years to get the money back. You'll be damn sure what the market's going to be. Really hard to predict that. Imagine if instead you'd switch out the antenna, plug in a different one. Extendable payloads. Imagine if you could add additional units onto your solar arrays, onto your antennas, and just keep building them out. You could build a kilometer-wide antenna in space. You don't have any need for any structure. You're in space by now. You just plug these things on the end. A little robot arm inches along the antenna or the solar panel like that. Now, the constraints of power and the constraints of antenna size disappear. Imagine the businesses that that opens up. Interplanetary travel. If we're ever going to go to Mars, and we are because I've seen The Martian, then we're going to have to assemble things in space. We can't afford to do it here on the ground and then launch huge, enormous structures. We have to launch and build in space. To build in space, you need smart robots. Space tourism. So I checked into my room here. It's a beautiful room, 2 queen beds. If I go to space on anybody's space tourism business plan, the rooms don't look anything like that. So if we're going to have a space tourism industry, and there's lots of people want to do that and be interested in that, again, you need to construct something in space that's going to allow for that. And my personal favorite, save the world. Save the whole world by harnessing the power of the sun for solar power. The problem with solar power is you need an enormous array up in space. No way can we build that today. But we could if you build it piece by piece, piece by piece, piece by piece. If you harness the power of the sun, we have a long-term answer to our problems of fossil fuels. So we can change the space paradigm with robotics this way. And have we started yet? We certainly have. A couple of companies, mine included, and others have already started satellite servicing, refueling, relocation, inspection, repair. Here's a picture of our space vehicle on the left there, flying up to a satellite to refuel it. We can refuel about 5 years mission life, fly off to another guy, refuel him, fly off to another guy, refuel him, refuel ourselves. We can fly up to a satellite, and we can pull the fuel out of it. I like to call that the vampire business model. We can go sell that fuel to somebody else. It's an entirely transferable asset in orbit, fuel, with this type of capability. We're working with DARPA on a program called Dragonfly. On your left is what I call Pringles Sat. Everybody likes Pringles. The picture here shows the antennas for the spacecraft all stacked up on the sides of the spacecraft like a bunch of Pringles. And you'll see at the top, the black thing on the top is a small robotic arm. You need no more than that. What you can now do is unfold those Pringles and build out significantly large antennas. And they fit inside the rocket. Get rid of my sofa getting into the house problem. You can get twice the aperture area, twice the data capacity, a lower mass and lower cost, because you get rid of all the deployables. Every one of those antennas today has a deployable. And finally, modular satellites. Now, our design for modular satellites is top secret. So I borrowed the Lego picture instead. There's several Lego models you can get of cool modular satellites. Imagine replaceable antennas, extendable structures, a common spacecraft bus for everything. So, message I want to leave you with. First 4 slides I showed you demonstrate that the satellite industry could be so much more effective. Decisions that we make today on a regular basis on the ground and in our personal lives make so much sense. In space, we don't do them yet because we're missing that repairman. We're missing that assembly guy. With robotics, I think you get that assembly guy. And you guys are the guys who've got to come up with the space applications in the future that harness that technology. Thank you.